I, 34F, have been married to James, 36M, for 12 years. We have a daughter Helen, 10F. My story goes back to when I lost my parents in a car accident at 18. My brother Robert, 32M, was only 16 then. With no close relatives willing to take us in, I became his legal guardian. I dropped out of college where I had just started my freshman year and took 2 jobs, one at a diner during the day and another at a convenience store at night. We struggled, but I made sure Robert finished high school and even went to college. Robert has always been protective of me, probably because he saw how much I sacrificed for him. I practically lived on coffee and 4 hours of sleep for years to make sure he had everything he needed. He would try to help by doing odd jobs after school, but I wanted him to focus on his studies. I met James when I was 22 at the diner where I still worked. He was a regular customer, always ordering the same breakfast, black coffee and blueberry pancakes. He was a junior associate at a prestigious law firm, charming and successful. He would leave generous tips and always had a kind word for everyone. After 2 months of daily visits, he finally asked me out. Robert was instantly suspicious when I introduced them. James seemed perfect, too perfect, according to Robert. He pointed out how James would subtly put down my job, suggesting I could do better if I went back to school. But James would then say he liked me just as I was. Robert said this was manipulative, but I was too smitten to see it. We got married after 2 years of dating. Robert was my man of honor, though he later told me he almost objected during the ceremony. He noticed how James had gradually isolated me from my few friends, always finding subtle faults with them. But I defended James, saying he was just looking out for me. The early years of marriage were good. James encouraged me to take a part-time office job at his law firm, though he was clear he didn't want me going back to college. He said one career-focused person in the family was enough. When Helen was born, he insisted I quit to be a full-time mom. I agreed, thinking it was best for our daughter. Over the years, Robert maintained a close relationship with Helen and me, but kept his distance from James. He would take Helen out every weekend, teaching her to ride a bike, helping with her math homework, and being the fun uncle she adored. James would make passive-aggressive comments about Robert trying to play dad, but never directly confronted him. Last month, Robert's behavior changed. He started calling more frequently, asking detailed questions about James' schedule. He wanted to know if James really worked late every Thursday and Friday, if he actually had weekend conferences, and if I ever checked his credit card statements. I found his questions odd but assumed he was being overprotective as usual. James had been working longer hours at his firm, saying they had a major corporate case. He would come home late smelling of cologne, which he explained was from client meetings at upscale restaurants. I noticed new charges at high-end stores on our credit card, but he said they were gifts for clients. I trusted him completely. On Christmas Day, we hosted dinner at our house. Robert arrived early to help me cook, though he seemed tense. James texted that he had to stop by the office first to handle an emergency. When he finally arrived 3 hours late, Robert was already agitated. As James walked in wearing a new suit I had never seen, Robert confronted him in front of everyone, my in-laws, Helen, and some close family friends. He pulled out his phone and showed us dozens of pictures. James entering a hotel with a young woman. James kissing her in his car. James shopping with her at the same stores where he claimed to buy client gifts. Robert explained that his college friend had seen James with this woman multiple times at restaurants across town. Concerned, Robert hired a private investigator who tracked James for a month, documenting his affair in detail. James tried denying it at first, claiming the woman was a client. But when Robert played an audio recording of them in the hotel lobby clearly being intimate, James' facade cracked. He admitted to a 6-month affair with his colleague Angela, but claimed it meant nothing. Helen, who had been quietly watching everything unfold, burst into tears and ran to her room. I stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. Robert lost control and punched James, knocking him into our Christmas tree. My father-in-law tried to restrain Robert while my mother-in-law started screaming that I needed to control my violent brother. My in-laws quickly shifted to damage control mode. They said all successful men occasionally strayed, and I should be mature about it. My mother-in-law reminded me how lucky I was that James had married a waitress with no degree and given me a good life. She said I owed it to Helen to keep our family together. This enraged Robert further. He revealed that James had done this before. 3 years ago, Robert had suspected James was having an affair with another lawyer at his firm, but couldn't prove it. He had seen them together multiple times, but James always had excuses. When Robert tried to tell me then, James convinced me my brother was jealous of our success and trying to cause problems. James kept apologizing, saying Angela meant nothing and he would end it immediately. He blamed work stress, said he felt neglected because I focused too much on Helen, then switched to saying he would do anything to save our marriage. His parents nodded along, telling me to think of how divorce would hurt Helen. I looked at my daughter's Christmas presents still unopened under the fallen tree, at the family dinner getting cold on the table, at my husband's lipstick-stained collar he hadn't noticed, and felt my whole world crumbling. I asked everyone to leave, including James. He tried to argue, but Robert stepped between us, and James finally left with his parents. James has been staying with his parents, who keep calling to say I'm overreacting. Helen refuses to talk to him and cries herself to sleep. Robert wants me to divorce James immediately, offering to help with legal fees. I'm torn between my brother who sacrificed his youth helping me raise him and has always looked out for me, and my husband of 12 years who I thought I knew. I don't know if I can ever trust James again, but I'm terrified of being a single mom. I feel lost and don't know what to do. Update 1: The past 2 weeks have been a blur of tears, anger, and shocking revelations. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, they did. James had been calling and texting constantly, switching between begging for forgiveness and blaming me for pushing him into Angela's arms. I blocked his number after he started showing up drunk at our house late at night. Then Angela, 28F, reached out to me through Facebook. Her message started with, "I know you probably hate me, but there's more you need to know." She claimed she met James at a firm happy hour 6 months ago. He told her he was separated and only living with me for our daughter's sake. According to him, we hadn't been intimate in years and were just keeping up appearances for his career. Angela sent me hundreds of screenshots of their conversations. Reading them felt like being stabbed repeatedly. James complained about everything: how I let myself go after having Helen, how I was boring and only talked about our daughter, how he regretted marrying someone so simple. He told Angela he was trapped in a loveless marriage with an uneducated waitress who got lucky. In their messages, James and Angela planned elaborate vacations using our savings. They had booked a Christmas trip to Paris, that's why he was late for dinner that day. He had been at her place exchanging gifts before coming home. Angela sent pictures of the expensive jewelry he bought her, jewelry I had seen charged to our credit card and believed were client gifts. When I confronted James about the messages, he came to our house crying. He admitted everything but blamed it on a midlife crisis. He said turning 36 made him question his life choices. Angela was young and exciting, she made him feel alive again. Then he dropped another bombshell: he had emptied our joint savings account of $45,000 over the past 6 months. I felt sick remembering how he discouraged me from checking our online banking, saying he had it under control. He spent our savings on hotels, gifts, and weekend trips with Angela. Money I had contributed to from my small inheritance when my parents died, money we were saving for Helen's college. That's when his facade finally cracked completely. Angela wasn't his first affair. There was Lisa, the paralegal from 3 years ago that Robert suspected. Before her was Michelle, a client's wife. And Karen, a junior associate who transferred firms. Each time he swore they meant nothing, just physical relationships during stressful periods at work. I called Robert crying after James left. He came over immediately and hugged me while I broke down. For years, he had tried to warn me about James' behavior, the late nights, the business trips that didn't match his court schedule, the way he flirted with younger women at firm parties. I had dismissed all of Robert's concerns, even accused him of trying to ruin my marriage out of jealousy. I contacted a divorce lawyer the next day. When James found out, his parents showed up unannounced at our house. They brought Helen an iPad and designer clothes, telling her that mommy is being unreasonable and daddy made a mistake but he loves us. My mother-in-law had the nerve to say I should be grateful James wanted to reconcile instead of trading me in for a younger model. Robert happened to be there and lost his temper. He told them their son was a serial cheater who stole our savings, and they were horrible people for defending him. My father-in-law threatened to cut Helen out of their will if I went through with the divorce. Robert literally pushed them out of the house and told them never to come back. The fallout has spread to our social circle. Most of our friends are from James' firm or his parents' country club. They're taking his side, saying marriage requires forgiveness and I'm being vindictive. One couple we've known for years told me that all men cheat and I should focus on why James strayed instead of playing the victim. Only Robert and my 2 closest friends from my waitressing days are supporting me. They've been taking turns staying with us since James still tries to show up unannounced. Helen is struggling badly. She overheard enough on Christmas to understand her father betrayed us, but she's too young to process it all. She's started having nightmares and her grades are dropping. I found her crying over old family photos yesterday. I enrolled her in therapy using Robert's insurance since James canceled our family coverage when I refused to let him move back home. The therapist says Helen feels abandoned and betrayed, not just by James but by her grandparents who are trying to buy her loyalty. Angela keeps messaging me with more details about their affair. Apparently, James told everyone at his firm that we were separated, which explains why no one ever warned me. He took her to firm events and client dinners, parading her around while I sat at home thinking he was working late. She claims she's telling me everything because she feels guilty, but I think she's just angry he won't leave me for her like he promised. I don't know how I'll manage financially. I haven't worked in 10 years and have no degree. Robert offered to help with bills until I get back on my feet, but I hate depending on my little brother again after all these years. James is already threatening to fight me on alimony and child support, saying I should get a job instead of trying to live off him. Sometimes I lie awake wondering how I missed the signs for so long. Other times I'm angry at myself for not listening to Robert years ago. But mostly I'm terrified of starting over at 34 with a traumatized child and no real work experience. I know I can't take James back after all his lies, but I'm scared of what comes next. Update 2: What I discovered last week changed everything. I was going through old financial documents for the divorce when I found something strange. There were large transfers from James' work account to our joint account, followed by immediate withdrawals to unknown accounts. The amounts were irregular but substantial, $10,000 here, $15,000 there. Robert works in forensic accounting, so I asked him to look at the documents. After reviewing them, his face went pale. He explained that these were transfers from his law firm's client trust accounts, where they hold money for settlements and escrow. James had been stealing from his clients for years, using the money to fund his affairs and maintain his lifestyle. The documents showed a clear pattern. James would transfer money from client accounts to ours, then quickly move it to secret accounts or withdraw it in cash. He covered his tracks by falsifying client billing records and settlement statements. Robert estimated he had stolen over $200,000 over the past 5 years. This explained how James afforded all those expensive gifts and trips with his mistresses on a junior partner's salary. It also explained why he panicked when I mentioned hiring a forensic accountant for the divorce. He wasn't just worried about hiding his affairs, he was hiding criminal activity. Robert helped me document everything and we anonymously reported it to the State Bar Association. Within days, James was suspended pending investigation. His firm conducted an emergency audit and found even more discrepancies. They fired him immediately and reported him to the police. James showed up at our house in a rage, accusing me of ruining his life. He looked nothing like the polished lawyer I married, his shirt was wrinkled, he hadn't shaved, and he reeked of alcohol. He screamed that I had no proof he took the money, that I was just bitter about the affairs. Robert recorded everything from our security camera. His parents arrived an hour later with their family lawyer. They offered me $100,000 to withdraw the bar complaint and sign a non-disclosure agreement. When I refused, they switched to threats. They said they would fight for full custody of Helen, claiming I was an unstable mother who coached my brother to create false evidence against their son. What they didn't know was that Helen was upstairs and heard everything. She came down and confronted her grandparents, asking why they wanted to help Daddy hide that he stole money. My mother-in-law tried to hug her, saying adults sometimes do complicated things for love. Helen pushed her away and told them she never wanted to see them again. The next day, James' firm sent letters to all affected clients admitting the theft. Some clients were elderly people whose retirement settlements James stole. Others were children's trust funds he drained. His colleagues who defended his affairs suddenly went quiet when they realized he had stolen from their clients too. James is now facing disbarment and criminal charges. His lawyer advised him to take a plea deal, but his parents are pushing him to fight the charges. They're more worried about their reputation at the country club than the people their son stole from. My mother-in-law had the nerve to send Helen a letter blaming me for destroying our family by reporting James instead of handling it privately. Helen has stopped asking to see James. She told her therapist she's angry that he stole money meant for other kids. When he tried calling her, she refused to talk to him. He blamed me for turning her against him, but she told him she had heard enough herself to know what kind of person he is. Some mutual friends have started reaching out to apologize. They admit they dismissed the affairs because James was so respected at work. Now they see he was living a complete lie. One friend confessed she had suspected something was wrong with the firm's accounts but didn't want to believe James could do something so unethical. Robert says I should feel vindicated that everyone finally sees James for who he really is. But mostly I feel foolish for not seeing it myself sooner. All those expensive gifts, the lavish trips with his mistresses, the way he always handled the finances, the signs were there. I just didn't want to see them. The divorce proceedings have accelerated given the criminal charges. James' lawyer hinted that he might agree to my terms just to avoid more scrutiny of his finances. His parents have stopped threatening to fight for custody now that Helen openly refuses to see them. Their perfect family image is shattered, and they're more concerned with damage control than actually helping their son face consequences. Update 3: The last 6 months have brought major changes to our lives. The divorce was finalized faster than expected because James took a plea deal. He's been disbarred and is serving a 3-year sentence for theft and fraud. His parents finally stopped harassing us after the sentencing, though I heard they've moved to Florida to escape the local gossip. Angela reached out one last time to tell me James had promised to marry her once his divorce was final. She was shocked to discover he had spent her money too. Apparently, he convinced her to invest in a fake real estate project. When his accounts were frozen during the investigation, she realized the money was gone. She's now one of many victims named in the criminal case against him. Helen sees James once a month at the prison, but only because she chose to. Her therapist helped her understand that she can love her father while disapproving of his actions. She's doing better in school now and has started playing soccer again. The nightmares have mostly stopped. Robert bought the house next door to us when it went up for sale. He says it's a good investment, but I know he did it to help us feel safer. He's been amazing through everything, helping Helen with homework, teaching her to change bike tires, being there when she needs to talk about James. Most of our old friends disappeared after James' arrest, but the few who stood by us have become like family. My former manager at the diner offered me my old job back while I take classes. I started community college last month to finally finish my degree. Helen tells everyone how her mom is in college too, and seeing her proud of me instead of embarrassed means everything. James' firm offered settlements to his victims, which means they know about his crimes but can't discuss them publicly. Several of his former colleagues have apologized to me. One partner admitted they had concerns about James' expense reports for years but looked the other way because he brought in big clients. His parents made one last attempt at reconciliation, sending Helen a guilt-ripping letter about forgiveness and family loyalty. She wrote back telling them real family doesn't help cover up crimes or try to blame innocent people. I've never been prouder of her strength. The house next door to Robert's is for sale now. The realtor mentioned James' old mistress Lisa lives nearby with her husband, the same Lisa from his first affair that Robert had warned me about. Apparently, she tried reaching out to James in prison but he refused to see her. Guess she's not so special anymore either. I've stopped feeling embarrassed about how long I stayed blind to James' lies. Some people still say I should have worked harder to save my marriage, that Helen needs her father. But I know we're better off without his constant deception. Helen has Robert as a positive male role model, and I'm finally living honestly instead of maintaining James' perfect family facade. Last week, I ran into my mother-in-law at the grocery store. She looked old and tired, nothing like the polished society woman who used to criticize my housekeeping. She tried to avoid me but Helen walked right up and asked if she was still helping bad people hide their crimes. My former mother-in-law left her card and hurried out. Helen just shrugged and said she likes our new family better anyway. We're not fully healed, but we're getting there. Some days are harder than others, but at least we're facing them with honesty. James can keep his lies and his prison sentence. Helen and I have built something real and strong, and that's worth more than any fake perfect life.